So today, we're diving into a story that is just as heartbreaking as it is horrifying. It's the legend of a ghost from a village called Belpur. But really, it's a story about the kind of human cruelty that can create a ghost in the first place. And it all comes down to this one haunting question: where is my child? This is the cry that echoes through the whole story, a question asked by a mother even after death. It's the engine that drives everything to come. To really get the story of the ghost, you first have to understand the place she haunts. This is the story of a woman named Anjali, and it all starts in the small, deeply troubled village of Belpur. Belpur is kind of like two different places. During the day, it's just a normal village. People work, they chat, life goes on. But when the sun goes down, the whole atmosphere changes. It gets heavy. And that's when villagers whispered about seeing a weeping woman under a peepal tree, searching for something or someone. So, let's meet Anjali, the woman at the heart of this legend. Her story doesn't begin with anything supernatural. It begins with a living nightmare. For 8 long years of marriage, she wasn't treated like family. She was treated like a slave. Her days were just a cycle of endless work and cruel insults. About her dowry, and what hurt the most, her inability to have a child. To really get the depth of her suffering, you have to understand this one word: Banj. It translates to barren, but it is so much more than that. It's not a medical term, it's a weapon. It's an insult used to strip a woman of her entire worth, to completely dehumanize her. And for Anjali, this horrible label became her whole identity in that house. Okay, so now that you feel the weight of that word, let's look at how this pressure cooker of abuse and expectation just kept getting worse and worse, turning Anjali's home into a place of pure torture. I mean, listen to this. Her own husband, Raghavir, told her, "If you can't give us a child, you're of no use." Her entire value as a human being was boiled down to one thing: producing an heir. Nothing else she did mattered. But then, after 5 incredibly long years of this misery, something amazing happens. The doctor tells Anjali she's pregnant. Can you just imagine that feeling? For the first time in years, there's this spark of real hope. She must have thought, finally, this will change everything. They'll finally accept me. But that hope? Yeah, it gets shattered immediately. Her mother-in-law's reaction is just ice cold and calculated. They don't see a daughter carrying their grandchild. They see an incubator. For them, this wasn't about family. It was a transaction. As soon as the baby was born, Anjali was disposable. You'd think being pregnant would finally earn her some kindness, right? Nope, not even close. In fact, things got worse. They still forced her to do heavy work. They barely fed her, sometimes just stale leftovers. Her body got weaker and weaker, and a doctor even warned them that both Anjali and the baby were in serious danger. They didn't care. All right, brace yourselves. This is where the story turns from tragic to just monstrous. All those years of abuse are about to explode into one final horrific act of violence. And it all started over something so stupid, so trivial: cold food. But of course, it was never about the food. It was about control. Raghuveer hits her. She screams for her in-laws to help her, and they just watch in total silence. Her last instinct as she's being beaten to death is to shield her pregnant stomach. And then the screaming stops. After she's dead, after her last breath is gone, you know what they say? Good. The trouble is over. No panic, no remorse, just relief. Like she was nothing more than a problem that had finally been solved. The absolute coldness of that is almost impossible to wrap your head around. What they do next is just chillingly practical. They know a proper funeral would raise questions, so they decide to just bury her in the field out back. Raghavir digs a shallow grave and dumps her body in, her hands still frozen in that protective gesture over her belly. And then they go back inside, wash their hands, and eat dinner. Like nothing happened. So the family thinks they've gotten away with it. They think the trouble is over. Oh, they could not have been more wrong. The human part of this horror story is over. Now, the supernatural part truly begins. And this isn't some random haunting. This is a reckoning. It starts quietly, just 3 nights later, with the sound of a baby crying in the house. Then it gets worse. Those cries turn into screams of agony. Her father-in-law sees a vision of her ghost in the courtyard rocking a spectral baby. The fear just completely takes him over. They become prisoners in their own home, so terrified they have to huddle together in one room to sleep.
So picture this, the three of them, huddled together, absolutely paralyzed by fear. A cold wind sweeps through the room, and there she is. Her spirit appears right in front of them for the final confrontation. What do you think is the one and only question she has for her murderers? And now we get to the fallout. And let me tell you, justice in this story, it doesn't come from any court or from the village. It comes from beyond the grave.
So, what happens after Anjali's spirit confronts them? Well, the next morning, Raghuvir and his parents are all found dead in that room. There's no sign of a struggle, no marks on their bodies. It's as if their own terror, or Anjali's presence, simply snuffed the life right out of them. With the killers gone, the terrified villagers call in a mystic, Hari Das Baba. He comes to the house and he immediately confirms that the spirit is Anjali. Then he does something incredible. He just walks out into the field, smells the earth, and points right to where her unmarked grave is. Her parents are called to the village, and they finally learn the horrifying truth about what happened to their daughter. And it's here that we finally see a tiny bit of justice. Two souls are finally given the respect they were denied. Anjali's body is exhumed from that shallow grave, and she and her unborn child are given a proper cremation, a measure of dignity that they only received in death.
But a funeral can't erase a horror like this. The story doesn't just end. The murders are gone, and her body has been laid to rest, but the trauma of what happened has soaked into the land itself. The horror she went through has become a permanent scar on the village, a ghost story told to this day.
And that brings us right back to the beginning, doesn't it? The villagers say that on certain nights, you can still hear a woman's voice asking that same heartbreaking question. Because even though her revenge is complete, a mother's search for the child she never got to meet, well, that's eternal. And it kind of leaves you wondering, what does it say about the world when a ghost's search for her lost child is more relentless than our own search for justice?